A new farmers market is being created every few weeks in Australia as people flock to buy produce that's reasonably priced, fresh and sold to the customer by the farmer that grew it. Some markets are not true farmers markets as they allow the on-selling of food produced by others, and the farmers market movement is determined to be able to assure customers that if they shop at an accredited farmers market, they get food from the producer. The Victorian Farmers Market Association is in the process of accrediting farmers market stall holders and markets, and the workshop you're about to see was presented at an Australian Farmers Market Association conference in August 2009 by Tristan McClean, who explains the Victorian Farmers Market Association accreditation process.
What I'm going to talk to you about today is I'm really going to run through the process of how the VFMA as an organisation has put the accreditation programme together, and then I'll go on to talk about the process for a producer to become accredited, and then lastly how we're going to accredit the farmers markets. The committee actually created a subcommittee which consisted of Miranda Sharp, President, and Vicky Davison, who's Secretary, and I've worked very closely with them the whole way along this, putting this whole programme together. And the first document that we worked on was what we call the VFMA key points. And the key points outline what can't be sold at a farmer's market, which is essentially no resellers, no repackagers, no art and craft, and no bric-a-brac. And then we sort of identified a need that we need to sort of try and group the producers. And we had a lot of discussion about how we were going to do that. And we eventuated on 4 different categories of producers. Lastly, the document also states that for a farmer's market to become accredited, they have to have a required percentage of their producers accredited first. So going on to the 4 different categories, we've called them P1 to P4, producer 1 to producer 4. P1 is a farm-based producer. It's for fruit and veg. It also accommodates nuts, honey, plants, and also if a farm producer does value add to their own product, that's also accommodated in that group. P2 is for the meat and dairy, and that also includes the eggs and fish. They're the 2 categories that are farmers, and if you are applying under a farm category, P1 or P2, we've also allowed for a section of non-food produce out of your market. We've allowed that for as long as it does not make up more than 10% of the overall store mix. And further criteria to that is that it has to contain 50% of the raw ingredients from the farm, and it can only have 1 value-added process. So an easy example would be a sheep grower who uses their wool to spin wool. That would be allowed as long as they did not sell more than 10% of that alongside other lamb products. But they couldn't, for instance, knit a jumper. That would be considered as a second value-added process. Further to that, we put together a group called P3, which is a shared farm stall. Again, we had much discussion about this. And the aim behind that one was that we're trying to encourage small farmers to be able to attend farmers markets. And the shared farm stall, we've allowed for 4 farmers in a local region to be able to apply under that section. The criteria for them is that they've got to demonstrate that, sorry, I've lost myself here. They've got to have a rotation on their stall. So if a farmer applies, and there's 4 in the group, each farm has to attend 1 in 10 markets. There's a maximum of 4 farmers that are allowed to apply under that group. And we've got to also ensure that all their products are individually packaged so we can clearly identify from where the farm it originates. The last group is the value adders. And with that group, we're trying to ensure that they can demonstrate that they are benefiting the local farmers market and the local farming community by using raw ingredients. Alongside those groups, I based the forms on those groups, and we also created a producer's handbook which explains the whole accreditation process. So So with the forms, I started by drafting them, and what I was trying to establish was an audit trail, a pretty basic audit trail where we could try and check what a farmer or producer is able to grow or make would match roughly the size of business that they're saying and the number of outlets they have. Farmers, and myself included, hate filling in paperwork, so I try to make it as usable as possible. We did trial it on many of the market members, both producers and market managers, and we took on a lot of that feedback. When we felt we were ready to roll out with it, we did seek legal advice, just to make sure that we weren't conflicted with any trading standards laws, and really just to try and see that it wouldn't be possible for a producer just to sort of shoot through the whole system. And I will sort of reiterate, this is a real work in progress, so it is sort of changing as we are going along, as we encounter new problems. We had a consultation period. We invited lots of market managers to come together, and we explained the process to them, took on a lot of the feedback as we put this together, and a lot of it also went out to the VFMA members to comment back to us. From there, I set up, we've called it the Independent Assessment Panel. I'll come on to what their responsibilities are in a moment. But they're made up of members of the VFMA. We've tried to get people on that panel that have a variety of backgrounds, both either in different types of produce or different styles of market management structure. And if you're on the panel, you have to sign a privacy document because they're looking at potentially some sensitive information. So that just gets kept within the room of the Independent Assessment Panel. What their role is that they've got to give a fair assessment of the application forms. They are also responsible for carrying out inspections. And one of the ways that we are sort of working with the value adders is we've put together a 100-point matrix which sort of tries to reflect how much they are benefiting the local farming community and how much local ingredients is used.
Sorry, Tristan, for instance, if you go back to your wool producer who's only allowed to spin the wool, if you've got someone locally who wants to knit that wool into a jumper, they're not a value adder.
They would be a value adder, but under the current key points, we're not allowed in non-food items unless it comes up under the farm producer as a 10% of their overall store mix. The only exception to that is plants.
Sorry, so the value adders would be...
Value adders are somebody who aren't farm-based. They're ideally sourcing all their ingredients locally.
Conserves?
Yeah, jams, that sort of thing.
Biscuits?
Yeah, exactly. We are finding that some producers are actually having to fill in more than one application. They may be farm-based. They may be doing farm-based value-added product, which would still be under the same application. But they may also be doing value-added products where they're not using their own farm ingredients.
And is there a percentage in the 4 categories that you're allowing, say, value added to be in?
Yeah.
Is it 10%, 20%, 30%? Do you stop at 30%?
No, we haven't. At this stage, we haven't put sort of legislation on how many actual farmers you have to have at your market as opposed to value adders. That may be something that we work towards further down the track, but not at this stage.
And what's the percentage in the value adding? You're talking about jams and conserves. What's the percentage in there of local products?
We've got a sort of matrix that we're using. It's a 100-point one. So if you buy from another storeholder, you get a higher value. If you buy within your local region, you get a slightly less value. If you're buying within Victoria, you get a slightly lower value, and such like again for interstate.
And is there an accommodation within that matrix for things like the fact that you can't get sugar except in Queensland? Yeah.
We are still offering a value to interstate.
But you can't make a conserve, generally speaking, unless you use sugar. So I'm just...
No, but within the matrix, because we're giving more than one value to something that's locally sourced, and something that's interstate is a half value. Together, if you have locally sourced fruits and interstate sugar, you'll still manage to get through the system.